Introduction of Sukuk. What is Sukuk? The Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institution (AFI) officially defines Sukuk as certificates of equal value representing undivided shares in ownership of tangible asset, usufruct, and services. Sukuk is used as one of the most convenient instruments for securing liquidity for institutional investors such as banks, investment funds, and insurance companies. This Islamic finance tool is used not only in Muslim countries but also in non-Muslim countries. The main advantage of Sukuk is to comply with Sharia while boosting the standard of living in Islamic society and developing society's economies. Sukuk issues. Sukuk are extremely difficult instruments to structure as they require extensive and costly legal and religious advice and a lot of different skills and resources to make it work. The development of new products and financial engineering are resource-intensive activities as it involves the conduct of market research, product development, and analytical modeling. Most holders keep Sukuk to maturity and held by large institutions so that the assets are unavailable for the average private investors. The lack of uniformity in procedures that had applied the principles of Sharia. As a proactive measure, ethical standards of inspection in accordance with Sharia should be taken. According to Sharia Board of AFI, Sukuk investors should have right over the Sukuk assets. Assets should be sold legally and there must be a transfer of assets from the originating company. The manager issuing Sukuk must certify the transfer of ownership of such asset in its book and must not keep them as his own asset. There must be an agreement that is evidence of a binding sale transaction. In order for Sukuk to achieve their macroeconomic and microeconomic benefits, it is important that asset securitization Sukuk be issued and traded on a large-scale basis. Sale of debt is permissible so long as it is free from any element of riba, gharar, and maisir.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Hazika binti Zakaria, metric number A17A0529. Then, four-part literature review based on the first issue, which is Sukuk are extremely difficult instrument to structure. There are some studies found that issuing Sukuk can be more expensive than issuing a bond, which is involve some additional operation. Next, smaller economic countries tend to have undeveloped Sukuk market, which require the expansion of Sukuk market, include the development of the legal framework. Next, issuance of a Sukuk require the issuance of an asset for the purpose of providing a special purpose vehicle and additional tax, stamp or duty that make the Sukuk even more detrimental. Next, new types of Sukuk would incur product development costs that involved by the conventional and Islamic bank. Then, Sukuk operating in the interest-based financial system make risk management in Sukuk become very complicated and difficult within the boundaries set by the Sharia. And the last is, some study found that a standard procedure to measure performance is still insufficient, which is an obstacle that does not facilitate the issuance of socially responsible investment Sukuk. Next, for the second issue, which is lack of active trading at the secondary market, there are some studies found that the majority of investors use strategy to keep Sukuk in their portfolio until maturity, known as buy and hold, have a negative effect on the secondary market liquidity. Then, other studies found that the investors have a culture of holding securities until maturity instead of traded it in the secondary market. Then, Sukuk certificates are not negotiable in the secondary market due to the existence of Sharia restriction because the speculative nature of the secondary market. Then, other study found that the absence of a secondary market is a major weakness in the trading of sukuk, and even the local market trades sukuk on the secondary market. Liquidity problems cannot be solved by the regulatory bodies in countries such as Malaysia and Bahrain. Next, other study found that the lack of well-developed and global sukuk trading platforms for active trading is one of the factors hindering secondary market, which make it difficult for investors to find the adequate trading platform. Then, the lack of global international Islamic bank also is another reason of the weak secondary market. Then, other study also found that the volume of the sukuk market is very small compared to the GDP in the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) countries. In addition, the secondary sukuk market, which is less active or even stagnating in trade, would make it difficult to both development on the basis of the Islamic finance product and investment on the basis of the Islamic finance contract.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Khairunisa Idayu binti Kamaruzaman, metric number A17A0149. Okay, I will continue part literature review. First issue is limitation of sukuk. Some of the limitation are lack of application related to structural innovation. There is still a need for understanding from market participants because the socialization of sukuk is still lacking. Second, lack of support of human resource who understand or expert in the field of Sharia capital market, and there are still diverse challenges such as liquidity risk, asymmetry information, convenience and sukuk structure and underlying principle. Then the majority of sukuk issue have a lack of liquidity which hinders the growth of the market. The global financial crisis manifested the importance of liquidity. The next issue is sukuk in ijarah. There is issue that come up due to the non-existence of Sharia compliance in the structure, such as the requirement of sukuk doesn't meet maqasid Sharia perspective, and some issue in sukuk ijarah and give solution in order to develop capital market. Ijarah sukuk refer to the securities representing ownership of well-defined existing and known asset tied up to a lease contract of which is the return payable to sukuk holders. The subject ijarah must have a valuable use. The ownership of the asset must remain with the trustee and only usufruct right may be transferred to the originator. Hence, anything which can be consumed cannot be leased by way of an ijarah. The last issue is asset securitization sukuk. Asset securitization may pose as a strategy in issue securities, namely by offering financial resource with a competitive rate. Meanwhile, reducing the cost of financing is achievable by asset securitization implemented. Islamic securitization in subprime mortgage is based on risk shifting and differs from the sukuk structure such as mudarabah and musyarakah mutanakisah principles, which are based on the risk sharing concept. All Islamic securitizations need the formation of debt throughout the sale and lease based modes of financing to the subsequent conditions.
Legislation. First is Islamic finance needs strong and facilitative legal system in order to be able to function efficiently with sufficient legal recognition, support and security. Without this component, there would be a legal limbo where the transaction threaten invalidity, illegality and non-enforceability. This is the key reason why Malaysia only began its Islamic banking and finance operation after setting up the legal framework. It started with the enactment of the Islamic Banking 1983, which permitted full-fledged Islamic bank to be licensed and specified the scope of Islamic banking.
Features of sukuk.
Sukuk is financial instrument that shares characteristics with bond and stock, which are issued to finance trade or the production of tangible assets. Sukuk has a maturity date, and in some of them, the holder will receive a regular income over the period and a final payment at the maturity date. While the conventional bonds price is determined only by the creditworthiness of the issuer, Sukuk price is determined by the creditworthiness of the issuer and the value of the asset. The most common Sukuk classification are based on the underlying Syariah contracts. These include Murabahah, Salam, Istisna, Ijarah, Musyarakah, Mudarabah and Wakalah. These contracts are not unique to the Sukuk market. They can also be utilized in Islamic banking, asset management, money market and many more. Based on RAM, asset-backed sukuk are characteristically non-resource sukuk, with the underlying asset forming the loan source profit and the capital payments. The credit risk of this type of sukuk will be solely determined by the performance of credit quality of the underlying asset, that is the asset's cash flow, and in some various situations, expected value at maturity given various stress situations and scenarios. Sukuk investors generally do not have access to the asset owner. Likewise, they are safeguarded from the latest financial spikes, made certain by the transaction structural and legal makeup. Asset-backed sukuk must encompass the essential securitization elements which establish that the credit risk profile of the sukuk is effectively delinked from that of the asset originator and is instead determined solely by the performance of the underlying asset. In asset-based sukuk, the asset is present for the purpose of Sharia fulfillment rather than to serve as a source of profit and capital payments. The credit risk assessment will typically be directed toward the entity with the obligation to redeem the sukuk. Usually, this will be the issuer. In some cases, however, the task may fall on the originator, sponsor or lease via the existence of a purchase undertaking agreement. In this instance, an analysis of the asset will be consequential. Rather, the credit quality of the issuer will be the key driver affecting the credit quality and rating of the sukuk. Simply put, asset-backed sukuk are similar to asset-backed securities with the necessary securitization elements present. The originator who wants to raise funds sells the income-generating asset to an SPV under a legal true sale. As a result of the legal true sale, the investors of the sukuk holders enjoy bankruptcy remoteness, where the creditors of the originator cannot claw back the asset from the sukuk holders if the originator is facing bankruptcy. In asset-based sukuk, although an asset may be used in the structure, it does not necessarily drive the returns to the sukuk holders. Through a number of credit enhancement features such as PU, liquidity facility and many more, the resource of the sukuk holders is not to the asset but to the issuer as obligator. If the asset is not performing, the issuer may still have to pay the expected return by exercising the credit enhancements. If the issuer defaults, the sukuk holders only have limited rights of disposal because they will be required to sell the asset to the issuer.
Ethics in Islamic finance industry related to sukuk. Islamic law contains a deeply entrenched ethical framework of concern for the environment and its diverse inhabitants. The contemporary Islamic finance industry should integrate this teaching into its ethical legal review process. One of the ways in which it may do so is to adopt from the world of socially responsible investment pro-environmental financial mechanisms and standards that are similar to those of Islam and which can be used to support implementation of Islamic ethics. First principle is truthfulness, honesty and fairness. An Islamic financial service IIFS should aspire to the highest standard of truthfulness, honesty and fairness in all its statement and dealing, and must treat its customer fairly. It means that the basic requirement regarding truthfulness, honesty and fairness is that IIFS must not either intentionally disclose information that may mislead interested party or the market, nor must it manipulate price by any means possible. Next principle is due care and diligence. NIIFS shall exercise due care and diligence in all its operations, including the way it structure of offer its product and provide financing, with particular regard to Sharia compliance and to do the truthfulness of research and risk management. This principle requires IIFS to act with due care and diligence in the best interest of their stakeholder. In essence, it includes any duty of best execution. Last principle is Sharia compliant, and IIFS must be able to demonstrate that its operations are governed by an effective system of Sharia governance and that it conduct its business in a socially responsible manner. And IIFS must comply with all applicable legal and regulatory and Sharia requirements as requirement for a good business conduct.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Wan Muhammad Aizat bin Wan Zulkifli. My metric number is A17A0762. I would like to present my part is about the contract used in Islamic banking industry of the Sukuk. The Institute of Islamic Banking and Insurance defines Sukuk contract as having similar characteristics to that of a conventional bond, with the key difference being that they are asset-based. Sukuk represents proportionate beneficial ownership in the underlying asset. The asset will be leased to the client to yield the return on the sukuk. The sukuk has attracted considerable attention in recent years from Muslim and non-Muslim alike. There are 7 type contract of sukuk are used in Islamic banking industry is sukuk mudarabah, sukuk musyarakah, sukuk murabahah, sukuk al-wakalah, sukuk ijarah, sukuk salam and sukuk istisna. Okay, first we go to sukuk mudarabah, profit sharing. Sukuk mudarabah it is a certificate that represent projects or activity that are managed on the basis of a mudarabah partnership based on trust contract. There will be one party or partner called the mudarib who will manage the project. Second, we go to sukuk musyarakah, profit and loss sharing. Sukuk musyarakah is derived from the word syirkah, which means partnership. In its simplest form, a musyarakah arrangement in a partnership arrangement between 2 or more parties where each partner make a capital contribution to the partnership in the form of either cash contribution or contribution in kind. The musyarakah partners share the profits of the musyarakah in pre-agreed proportions and share the loss of the musyarakah in proportion to their initial capital investment. Third is sukuk murabahah, which means cost plus sale or deferred payment. In the Islamic finance industry, the term murabahah is broadly understood to refer to a contractual arrangement between an investor as the seller and an originator as the purchaser, whereby the investor would sell specified assets or commodities to the originator for spot delivery in the expectation that the customer would be able to meet its deferred payment obligations under the murabahah agreement. Fourth is Sukuk al-Wakalah, which means agent. Al-Wakalah structure stems from the concept of a wakalah, which means an agreement whereby one party entrusts another party to act on its behalf. In general, it is a contract in which a party authorities another party to act on behalf of the former based on the agreed terms and conditions as long as her or she is alive. Here, a wakil could be appointed to manage the wakalah portfolio, which the aim generate and agree upon profit return. Fifth is Sukuk Ijarah, which is leasing. In the Islamic finance industry, the term ijarah is broadly understood to mean the transfer of the usufruct of an asset to another person in exchange for a rent claim for him, or more literally, a lease. Six is Sukuk Salam, deferred delivery purchase. In its simple form, a salam contract involves the purchase of assets by one party from another party on immediate payment and deferred delivery term. The purchase price of the assets is typically referred to as the salam capital and is paid at the time of entering into the salam contract. A salam contract may be constructed has been synonymous with the objectives of a forward sale contract. Forward sale contracts are generally forbidden under Sharia unless the element of uncertainty or inherent in such contracts is effectively eradicated. For this reason, certain criteria must be met in order for a salam contract to be Sharia compliant. The last is Sukuk Istisna, which is Islamic project bond. Istisna is a contractual agreement for manufacturing goods and commodities, allowing cash payment in advance and future delivery, or a future payment and future delivery. A manufacturer or builder agrees to produce or build a well-described good or building at a given price on a given date in the future. Price can be paid in installments, step by step as agreed between the parties. Istisna can be used for providing the facility of financing the manufacture or construction of house, plants, projects, and building for bridges, roads, and highway. That's all my point. Thank you.
Recommendation number 1 is the great need for expertise in the field of Islamic finance, and therefore increasing and continuous effort in educating and training more human resource by establishing more education and training center can be a key factor in understanding and development of Islamic capital market instruments such as Sukuk. Number 2, the need for innovation and development of new Shari'i compliance product in the Islamic capital market, especially the structuring of Shari'i compliance Sukuk product is a very important factor in increase the local and global Sukuk market. Number 3, the role of the Shari'i Advisory Board should be considered important in making decision about a particular product. Therefore, the process of selecting Shari'i Board members should be based solely on academic performance, knowledge of Shari'i, field experience, and member contribution to ensure proper consideration of Shari'i opinion on the matter and subsequently take the right decision. Recommendation number 4, opinion given by the Shari'i Advisory Board should be the main consideration when making organization decision on matter on concern. Number 5, when evaluating Sukuk, the problem of Shari'i compliance in all process should be one of the main problem from looking at the other credit qualification from issue Sukuk. Number 6, they ensure the continuous and efficient growth of the Islamic finance industry continue to progress and harness the enormous growth potential. There must be better coordination to overcome the problem of Shari'i coordination and the creation of international Sukuk fund. Number 7, transparency in knowledge Shari'i between different Islamic finance institution is one of the factors that can help create a better understanding and harmonization in product development. And the last, number 8, the development of the Sukuk market in any region depend on the political and legal flexibility of the Sukuk issue. Therefore, government initiative in this regard, especially by easy law related to ownership and taxation, are very important.